You've probably noticed that the internet's gotten a bit crazy recently. We've been seeing reports about folks getting doxxed, their accounts broken into, their DMs leaked, their identity stolen in data breaches, and all kinds of other unfortunate situations one could find themselves in. Broadband has gotten a lot more mainstream, and with it, the rate of cyber attacks has increased dramatically, and there really aren't a whole lot of resources for learning how to protect yourself in this environment. So with this video, I'll be sharing my perspective as a seasoned private investigator and cybersecurity analyst to show you how your privacy can be compromised and how to defend it. Why is it so important that we have strong OPSEC and proper security practices on the internet? Because every 40 seconds, someone out there has become the victim of a cybercrime. Before I could even get to this point in the script, another identity theft, account theft, or system compromise has occurred. Before we get into the weeds though, I would like to point out what this video is and what it isn't. These are general guidelines for protecting both your account security and your personal security. What this isn't is an absolute list of requirements. You're likely not going to need everything in this video, but it's important to know what your options are so you can apply the ones you need after running a risk assessment. This video is pretty long, so I'll have timestamps for every section available in the description that should also show in the video. Let's get to it. First things first, we need to take a look at some general concerns when it comes to trying to maintain OPSEC online. It's important to start at the ground floor and work our way up when it comes to building up our security practices because many people have been absolutely pwned by not acknowledging and hedging these concerns. So I'm going to cover them to make sure you know about them. This section may be considered common sense to some of you, but if it helps even one person out there, I don't want to skip it. You're probably already aware of this, but social media is one of the quickest ways that folks in my industry ascertain enough information about you to build up a profile. Most people still have a Facebook account that's never been scrubbed, full of upwards of 2 decades worth of very personal information that one could use for nefarious purposes. Family ties, friends, places you frequent, hell, even where you live if the one searching is dedicated enough. Good example for you, a few years back while I was working for an investigative firm, I used Facebook and Instagram pretty frequently to figure out where the people we were searching for were hiding. Some made the mistake of posting images to their feed with identifiable places in the background. Some had information about them posted by their family. Probably none of them realized that we use the social media accounts of them and their family to track them down. I personally used a bot script to the Grease Monkey browser extension to go back and wipe my entire Facebook history, but I'll definitely be going into greater detail on that in a later video about disappearing from the internet. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see that one. But for now, it doesn't hurt to set your Facebook to private. You should already have the people that you want on your friends list added, and your family can still contact you that way without other people being able to spy on you. If I said the word triangulation, would you recognize it? You really should, because it's one of the scariest assets an investigator has at their disposal. It's been proven time and time again that if you leave enough information in a photograph, someone out there will find you. Be it the GeoGuessr wizard doing it for a YouTube video, or the Mad Lads over on 4chan doing it to troll Shia LaBeouf or to coordinate airstrikes on ISIS with Russian military members who happen to be posting to the board. You can do some work to mitigate this, like blurring signs around you, blurring faces, whatever. But if you're seriously trying to not be found, then not having pictures taken of you uploaded to the internet is truly your best bet. Remember, a picture says 1,000 words. We live in an era of a strangely dystopian level of technology. Those same photos I mentioned before could potentially be used for something more nefarious. There are services out there on the web that allow you to upload an image and the service will scan around for images matching the face in that image. It can sometimes find social media profiles, forum posts, things you may not want coming back up. Luckily, a lot of these services fall under laws that require them to remove your data upon request. With some, such as facecheck.id, there's a clearly displayed button at the top showing you how to request this data removal. Wait, we reserve the right not to remove photos of... Alright, that's a pretty base stance from FaceCheck. Some of you probably remember an old thing we used to say in chat rooms back in the 90s and early 2000s. ASL? Which is short for age, sex, and location. While it may be funny to reminisce on, these 3 pieces of information are key in locking down positive information on someone. If you know these 3 things, it makes finding information on public records significantly easier. It means you, your family, your address, phone number, email, everything you definitely don't want some random person from the internet to have, which conveniently leads me into the next topic. Some of you may be surprised to hear this, but even though we don't get those old huge printed yellow page books delivered to us anymore, it's still entirely possible to access a massive compendium of data on pretty much everybody. White pages and yellow pages have been converted to digital form, and you can test them for yourself to see how quickly you come up in the search. That's pretty concerning, huh? Luckily, we can request a removal for places like this, and they're pretty much required by law to comply with a removal request. That may sound like a lot of work, and it is, which is why services have cropped up that will handle that for you. Delete Me, Incogni, and Aura are just 3 popular examples of these services, and each will send out removal requests to not only white and yellow pages, but also online data brokers who buy and sell your information from everything from apps to websites. This isn't a method you'll see used by private investigators, but sometimes those aren't the only people you have to worry about trying to compromise you. There is no code of ethics in compromising someone if the attacker is truly dedicated. If you're dumb enough to leave your laptop or cell phone laying around in public for any length of time and you don't have protections in place for that, then you're pretty much screwed. A famous example of this is Ross Ulbricht, aka Dread Pirate Roberts, the creator of the Silk Road drug trading website that used to be on the dark web. He was compromised when the feds distracted him in a public place and snatched his laptop from him before he was able to hit any kind of kill switch. They then extracted everything they could from the laptop, and because he was logging into the Silk Road to that laptop, they were able to pin the entire site on him. He was convicted of running this website and is still behind bars. While preventing device theft is a pretty huge concern, you can still get pwned even while you have full control of your device. You've probably heard before that public internet is unsafe. We're talking about your local coffee shop internet, the library, anywhere that the internet is freely accessible or paid accessible through a router provided by a business or organization. It may seem convenient when you're on the go, and even if you want to maintain some extra level of privacy on the internet, but our primary concern with public internet comes in the form of man-in-the-middle attacks. What's a man-in-the-middle? Well, you may have heard of a tool before called the Wi-Fi Pineapple. This hardware allows someone to sit between you and the internet connection you're trying to use by mimicking the connection and convincing your computer that they're the path to the router that your computer calls out for when you turn on your Wi-Fi. This system passes along all internet traffic back and forth from your computer or phone to the internet while also allowing the man-in-the-middle to see all of your traffic. Encryption is the only thing that will save you if you accidentally connect to an attacker's pineapple, so most of the time it's best to just avoid using public internet in general until you get a stronger grasp on how to truly keep your privacy secure online. This is probably going to be a very unpopular take. But you do not know the people on your computer! Yeah, sure. You've probably chatted with them for hours via Discord text chat or Twitter group chats. You may have played some video games with them, been in a voice chat, whatever. You do not know that person. They are not your friend. They are acquaintances. Oh, but what if I've gotten into a video chat with them? Blah blah, don't care. The world is sketchy, and people who are constantly online are even sketchier, especially in Discord servers and on Twitter. There are people out there who will play the EVE Online style long game, place themselves into a community, slowly build up friends, weasel their way into a position of power, and then abuse said power in some way. Pedo shit, mod abuse, exposing you for clout, you name it, some freak out there is looking to take advantage of you to do it. All of this is to say that 99% of the people you speak to on the internet should be treated almost as OPSEC challenges. Be careful what you reveal, the images you post, hell, even the transactions you've placed if you're extra paranoid. There's a chance that some of these online people will end up becoming lifelong friends, and that's great. I've got a handful of those who I met online who I've known for around a decade. The catch with that is that I've met all of them in person. I've spent real-world days worth of time with these folks and gotten to know them very well. Those are actual friends. The people who hang around in your Discord server are not. This is especially true if you're any kind of public figure. Got 1,000 followers on Twitter? Maybe you're a live streamer? How about a YouTuber? Chances are, someone out there is looking to latch on in the most toxic ways imaginable, and if you mistake them for a friend, you're going to be walking right into a horrible time sometime in the future. This one's also going to piss some people off, but I don't give a fuck how private you think your Discord server is. It simply is not. Not only can anyone in your server leak your posts, but the Discord API itself can be used against you. Someone not even in the server can use the API to pull an archive of every single thing ever posted in that server in a nice and neat little spreadsheet file, and there isn't a damn thing you can do about it. All of this is to say that Discord is never private. You should never treat it as such. Don't share or post anything you wouldn't be comfortable with getting leaked onto the wider internet. If it's something you wouldn't want getting retweeted, don't post it. You may have heard a phrase before, the internet is forever. This is very true. Once something's on the internet, it's there forever. You'll just about never be able to get rid of something if someone else wants it to stay up. There are dozens of archives out there for various services that exist entirely for this purpose. This is good for maintaining repos of old articles from defunct websites and maintaining lost media. This can be really bad for you if someone decided to archive your entire Twitter timeline full of inflammatory takes from when you were 13 and edgy. Anything you've said on the internet is probably out there, saved on some server or on someone's hard drive, just waiting to be pointed against you. It's time to mention one of my favorite websites, HaveIBeenPwned.com. This site allows you to enter your email to check to see if accounts connected to it have been pwned, aka included in a data breach dump. While this may sound like some elaborate spycraft, it's actually a pretty common thing that happens pretty much daily. Some company out there probably just got their dump sold on a darknet forum while you were watching this video. There isn't a whole lot we can do to mitigate that, which is where good practices come into play. We'll be circling back to this later in the video, but for now it's time to start a risk assessment. With all these concerns in mind, it's very important that I remind you that context is everything. You may be some regular Joe out in rural Texas, or a Delta Ranger Beret Force Cry brand gooner, a soccer mom posting hot takes on Facebook, or maybe you're an anti-war journalist who has family to worry about back home. Well, frankly, that anti-war journalist is going to have far bigger concerns about the minute details of their OPSEC than the soccer mom posting her local news hot takes on Facebook. Though that soccer mom does risk being cancelled, doxxed, and or losing her job over those hot takes, so some of this will apply to her too. Risk assessment is a process, and applying that process to your online life can save you a lot of trouble in the long run. I can't personally decide what your risks are, but I can at least give you the process to point you in the right direction, so let's take a brief moment to break down the risk assessment process. First, identify your hazards. This is going to mean doing an incognito mode check on yourself via Google, public records like white and yellow pages, and trying things like seeing if you can find a connection to your real name or location from your online pseudonym or username. From there, we're kind of already assessing the risks. Figure out what's actually a risk to you. Can someone find your full name through posts linked to your online account that you intend to post with? Well, WayBackMachine exists, and there may be archives of those posts. Checking could very well make an archive if one didn't exist already, so the safest bet is to start with a dedicated account, which is the next step of controlling the risk. From there, we verify that the steps we've taken are going to cover our ass, and if they do, then we're good to go. If not, we need to apply more layers of good practices. There are a lot of people on the internet that will try to offer you a catch-all solution to your privacy woes, a VPN, some service to protect your identity, etc. These are solutions to some problems, but not the general issues you'll face from having poor OPSEC practices. Having a VPN does absolutely nothing if someone can just find your name on something you posted and dox you from there. That isn't to say that these tools aren't providing a valuable service, so much as it is to say that good practices are better than countermeasures. Listen, I know, you don't want to have to remember a dozen different passwords of different variations to log into all the services you use. I get that. That doesn't mean we should be lax on our security here. Services get their databases owned all the time. For a little bit of fun while watching this video, open up another tab in your browser and go to HaveIBeenPwned.com. Put in your email and see what it gives you. Chances are your email and likely previous passwords have been dumped on some forum somewhere after a data breach. You probably remember getting an email from some service at some point telling you that it was critical to change your password immediately because of a data breach dump like this. If you reuse that password on another service but forgot to change it on that service, then an attacker will find it pretty easy to get into that account. Password managers are an invaluable service for this situation. They generate a huge password that's a jumbled mess you could never remember on your own, while you use a single master password to access the manager. That complicated password no one can remember can be the difference between me being able to guess what your Facebook password is and not having a clue whatsoever because it's a string of random shit I could never guess. The beauty of this setup is that the data saved by the password manager service is generally either going to be non-existent or heavily encrypted to the point that attackers generally can't get much info even if they do compromise the service itself. A lot of these password manager services offer phone apps as well to make it convenient to log in on all your devices, so there's not much excuse to not use one. Would you want me to be able to guess your password and start reading all your Facebook messages or Twitter DMs? Probably not. So don't make it easy for me to get in. Let's assume you don't want to use a password manager for whatever reason. Well, a great alternative here is to use passphrases that are memorable but hard to dictionary attack. Simply put, that means throwing words at the proverbial wall and seeing what sticks. Generally, people will struggle to remember complicated passwords, so many like to pick words that are either relevant to their life or their work. If an attacker knows enough about you, they can really cut down the list of the words to narrow it down. That's where passphrases come into play. One of my favorite XKCD comics is called Correct Horse Battery Stable, which I understand sounds like I just had a stroke, But as you can see on the screen now, it's a pretty convenient way to remember a password that ends up being stronger than the one you could come up with on the spot. This doesn't always work, as many government, school, and various other services will require you to insert a random assortment of characters and numbers, but at least this way you can add a date or something to the end that's memorable to you without compromising your security posture too much. Conveniently, you can use CorrectHorseBatteryStaple.net to generate new passphrases if you don't want to come up with your own. While a password manager or passphrases are generally going to be pretty secure, they won't prevent you from getting pwned if your data's already been included in a breach dump somewhere on the internet. An attacker can simply copy and paste your login information and gain access if you haven't changed your password. Since we can't really know at the exact moment someone compromises us, it's good to have a regular schedule for changing passwords for critical accounts. Scheduling password changes combined with a password manager makes it incredibly difficult for an attacker to brute force or guess their way into your account. Another very easy way to prevent someone from brute forcing their way into your account is to use multi-factor authentication. You've probably heard of two-factor or 2FA, which is a pretty commonly used type of authentication these days. That's a type of multi-factor authenticator. To boil this term down, it's a collection of three things: something you are, something you have, and something you know. It doesn't have to use all three of these at once, but any combination of at least two is good for your security. What do these terms mean? Let's break them down real quick. Something you are. This is a physical characteristic that is unique to you. Biometrics like fingerprints and iris scans, voice confirmation, things like that. Something you have. This is a physical object, something like a key card or a USB device. Something you know. This is your typical password or PIN. Alone, each of these authentication methods could be defeated. In combination, they're very difficult to bypass. If you're in the camp that feel the need to go to a deep level with their OPSEC, then having a dedicated account for posting your political hot takes or whatever to the internet is going to be a good idea. This means all the way down to having a dedicated email address that's used only with this other dedicated account on whatever social media or forum you intend to use it on. This goes a long way towards preventing someone from doxing you by linking your activity to past accounts, your friends, or anything that could compromise you. When I'm doing a deep dive on someone, one of the first things I try to do is to build up a network of accounts that person has used across various platforms. The more accounts I can find, the higher the chance they've slipped up somewhere and revealed personal information that I could use as part of my investigation. With dedicated accounts that you purposefully keep disconnected from your own personal accounts and real-world connections, it's pretty much impossible for an investigator to dive deeper than the surface level of that one account. In the last section I mentioned dedicated or burner emails. But what are they? A burner email is exactly what it sounds like. It's an email account that you use until either you need to burn it or it gets burned out of your control. These are separate accounts not connected to your main services and not through services that require identification to use. A great example of this is 10-minute mail, which allows you to use an email address for 10 minutes before the entire inbox and account are completely wiped from their servers. If you need more than 10 minutes, you can click one button to extend that timer. Other services, like Firefox Relay and Gmailnator, can be used if you're less worried about privacy vigilance and more concerned about some service spamming up your email, which is a very underrated use of burner emails. We've all been there. You go to buy something on a store online and they hit you with a 15% discount if you just give them your email address and use the code they send you. Well, instead of give them your personal email, which lets them spam it with garbage and sell your data to brokers, you could just use 10-minute mail to get the discount code and go about your day. I know this one is going to sound a bit strange, but hear me out. Several services, primarily social media, have quirks to them that would enable an attacker to find old usernames associated with an account. On Twitter, this can be as simple as going back through old tweets with replies to see the old username in the replying user's post. And on Instagram, there's a box on many profiles that shows previously used names. Not every account has this option, as it's generally applied to very public profiles, but as far as I'm aware, there are still API tricks that an attacker could use to get old names. You may not think this is a problem until someone realizes that you had an old username attached to your hot and spicy political account that reveals you had some sketchy posts on some gaming forum back in the day, or some journalist comes knocking on your door to ask for an interview before they launch a hit piece on you. Reusing usernames is one of the worst things you can do if you're trying to protect your privacy online. There are freely available and open source software, like the Sherlock project, that can easily find accounts across a wide variety of sources. If you reuse a username across websites or apps, this tool makes it incredibly easy to find all of your accounts. For some, this won't be an issue at all. For others, it would probably be pretty embarrassing if their 10 to 20-year-old forum post got leaked somewhere, or they got found by someone they didn't want finding them because they reused their username from Xbox on Facebook, and now the person searching for you knows your full name, the city you live in, and who all your friends and family are. Which leads us nicely into the next topic. If privacy is a concern for you, then there is a decent chance that you already have a history online with some personal accounts. That means that you have a particular typing style that someone like me can identify and use against you. It's not a guaranteed win in court, but if I can recognize the same typing style between two accounts that are supposedly not linked, then I can start to build a profile of potential alt or sock accounts. This goes pretty deep. Some folks can be identified by the particular way that they type. Some from the memes they choose to repeatedly use across different platforms. Others by the first 10 people they follow on Twitter. All of these things are tells, and every tell helps someone like me build a profile on you. The good news is that for a lot of people, your behavior and particular styling may change over time, either through intention or just natural evolution. I know I'm not the only one out there whose old forum posts from when they were a teenager are dramatically different from the posts I put out now. You'd be hard-pressed to tie one of my current accounts back to one from, say, the mid-2000s based on any type of behavior or style. It definitely helps that I've aged 20 years in that time, but intentionally changing my style over the years has also really aided in preventing the linking of old accounts. The shorter you can make the string an investigator can follow into your past life, the lower you make the chance of you getting absolutely pwned by your attacker. This is going to be one of the strangest pieces of advice you will hear in this entire video, but hear me out on this one. Password recovery forums are going to ask you a series of very predictable questions. What's your mother's maiden name? What street did you grow up on? What was your first pet's name? Every single one of these questions can be answered with a thorough enough social media search if you're not careful enough. Your post from 5 years ago reminder with a picture of your dog could very well be the ticket to someone compromising your account. Again, don't make it easy for an attacker. Lie on the password recovery form. Write down your answers somewhere only you have access to, and go about your day. This should be common sense, but for a lot of people it's really not. Location tagging all your photos, tagging businesses and places you're visiting, posting about your hobbies and interests, all of this is data that can be used against you. While this is last on the list, it's probably one of the most important good practices that you can apply to your situation. I know many of you out there are addicted to your phones and Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, guilty, or whatever. You can still be addicted to those things all you want. I ain't the police or your therapist, and this video isn't about that. That being said, there's really no reason to be blasting information about yourself on these platforms without taking all of the concerns and good practices into account. Most of Twitter doesn't give a shit that you had a hot dog at Hard Rock Cafe in Vegas. But now everyone knows you're occupied in the Strip and can do with that information as they wish. Maybe they want to stream snipe you. Maybe they want to break into your house while you're not there. You just told them that you were deep in the Vegas Strip 5 minutes ago, so they already know for sure that you won't be there. Is that worth it? That's a question you'll have to answer for yourself. For a final section, it's important that I do get across that while I push that good practices are better than countermeasures line a lot, we have to recognize the fact that these countermeasures do actually provide useful services to you if you use them correctly and combine them with good practices. No one solution will cover all your bases, but every step helps. Layering countermeasures on top of good practices will usually never be a net negative to your online security posture, but sometimes not layering them can be. So we're going to cover a handful of them here. You've probably seen a burner phone before, be it in some TV show, a movie, stories of espionage, or other media. But do you know what a burner phone actually is? Generally speaking, a burner phone is going to be one or both of two options. It's either going to be a cheap and essentially disposable phone purchased from some small phone shop or kiosk somewhere, or it's going to be a dedicated phone that will take a SIM card for a prepaid plan. You can get relatively cheap smartphones on Amazon that can serve well here, or if you want to go lower scale, then flip phones are still an option. This is a very deep rabbit hole that goes into the actual functionality of cellular networks, so I'll be doing a video covering this topic in much more detail later, as it would bloat this already massive video to twice its size. Subscribe if you want to see that. Should be soon after this video releases. You may not have put much thought into it, but you probably hand out your personal home address to a lot of websites. You likely buy things online here and there and get them shipped straight to your home. That's mighty convenient for both you and any potential hacker that compromises that business's website and now has your home address. This could then be dropped into one of those data dumps we talked about earlier, and now your address is free for the entire world in a dump online. This is how Sniper Wolf was able to find Jack's Films house, as some of you may remember. There's a very easy way to solve this problem though, in the form of PO boxes and virtual addresses. You're likely familiar with what a PO box is already, but to quickly recap, they're a mail storage box that you pay the post office for. Now, some of you may not be aware that there are services online which offer an address that you can use for similar purposes to a PO box, where you can get packages stored in or forwarded to your home, but they can also, similarly to PO boxes, serve as your address for important documents and forms from places like the FCC, which is handy for anyone who wants a ham or GMRS radio license. While some may scoff at them, VPNs are actually pretty damn valuable. They encrypt your traffic, which prevents man-in-the-middle attacks from truly compromising you in any way, as everything they sniff gets scrambled, but they also outright prevent your internet service provider from seeing your activity. Without a VPN, they'll see every web page you access, everything you do online. With a VPN, they see nothing but the amount of traffic you're sending and receiving through your VPN. This is great for many reasons, from just wanting more privacy while using the net legitimately to, other things. Like downloading movies and games that you definitely paid for. In general, they're a good investment as long as you know who you're working with. A great example of what to look for is when NordVPN got compromised. Someone gained direct physical access to one of their server farms and obtained nothing. No customer data. Why? Because Nord doesn't retain any of that data. That's the type of activity I like to see from my VPNs, and that's what you're looking for when it comes to privacy. Nowadays, there are many options for internet browsers, offering all kinds of features, from Opera offering direct connection to Discord and Twitch, to Brave having a built-in ad blocker. Every browser out there wants to entice you to use them, but not all browsers are built alike. Anyone who's been in my Discord long enough can tell you that I really don't care for the absolute spyware package that is Opera GX, and generally won't use a Chromium-based browser outside of Brave. I'll be doing a video later in this series covering privacy-focused browsers in more detail, but for now I'll just say that your top 3 picks should be Firefox, LibreWolf, or Brave. I'll also be covering the Tor browser in a later video, but that requires a bit of a lot of attention to detail to cover here. There are a lot of privacy-focused browser extensions that I could recommend here, but I've cut it down to a pretty short list of stuff that I use all the time, starting with uBlock Origin. uBlock has consistently been the best ad blocker that I've used, and it's available for pretty much every browser. VPNs also technically count here, and I use the browser extension for the VPN that I use with my family. They're usually a very convenient way to make sure you actually use your VPN in case you don't remember to turn on the desktop client or don't want to use it. Privacy Badger is another great recommendation here, as it filters out and specifically blocks trackers that are present on basically every website. These trackers are what are used to build a profile on you that can be sold to data brokers. Another great extension for preventing tracking is Canvas Blocker, which prevents some back-end things that happen with HTML and JavaScript that would be used to profile your browser. Then you've got extensions like Decentralize, which emulates common web libraries locally so that websites can't spy on you through the delivery of those libraries. There's many others, but this is a good short list. I'll have all of these linked in the description for your convenience. Another thing that may be surprising to some people is the fact that while you can get many privacy-focused browser extensions, they also help to further build a profile on you on some websites, and forensics experts can use that to show who you are. What do I mean by this? Well, every time you visit a website, that website gets a snapshot of what your browser is and any changes made to the page by the browser and extensions that you're using. This may not seem like a very big deal, but if you're super paranoid about privacy, then you may just want to run with no extensions. If you're using an ad blocker, sponsor block, and a handful of specific extensions for various things online, Let's say coupon extensions and a video game raid tracker. That's a very specific list of changes made to the website by extensions, and that could potentially be tied to you. Maybe that's a concern for you. Maybe it isn't. But at least you know about it now. Are you familiar with the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? You really should be. HTTP is the traditional way that data is shared across the web. Unencrypted and pretty simple to attack with a man-in-the-middle or similar setup. HTTPS adds in an SSL, or Secure Sockets Layer certificate, which creates a secure encrypted connection between the website server and your browser. With pretty much every browser, you should see a lock icon next to the URL bar. This will show you if the site you're using is using HTTPS or not, and with most browsers, you can click it to see further information about the SSL certificate. HTTPS only mode does exactly what it says on the tin. It tells your browser and websites that you want it to exclusively connect through HTTPS. You can set this up relatively easy on Firefox and Chrome or Chromium-based browsers. For Chrome browsers, go to Settings, Security and Privacy, Security, scroll to the bottom of the page, and then toggle Always Use Secure Connection. For Firefox Desktop, go to Settings, Privacy and Security, scroll to the bottom, and then select Enable HTTPS Only mode. I'll have another video going in depth on this later, but if you want to try it for now, that's how you set it up. Many years ago, I used a script that I found on a forum to wipe out my Facebook timeline. This was an incredibly sketchy move because I didn't fully verify all the code myself, but lucky for me, it wasn't malicious and actually worked. Tools like TamperMonkey and GreaseMonkey can use these scripts to wipe your timeline on the more frustrating social media sites. Nowadays though, you don't really need to go to this extreme, but you absolutely still can. Alternatively, you can just use a service like the Redact app, which is specifically designed to mass delete your posts across a pretty wide variety of social media platforms. They've got quite a few of them locked behind the paywall, but honestly, for a service like this, it is absolutely worth it to throw them a little bit of scratch for the value they're offering you. With any of these tools, you can wipe the slate relatively clean and get rid of all that cringe shit you posted when you were 14. Well, that is unless someone decided to archive your posts for whatever reason, which brings us to WayBackMachine is a very convenient way for someone to archive anything they want, including your social media timeline. Luckily, they offer a way to request removal from their archive. Now, I've seen some posts online discussing that some folks have had some difficulty with getting them to actually comply with removal requests, but this seems to have been solved by using a template for a GDPR data removal request. For those who aren't aware, the GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation of the European Union. But Crux, I live in the US. That's okay. You can still file a GDPR request, and it's likely your best way to get your personal information removed from any archive like WayBackMachine. I'll have a Reddit post with that template linked in the description. When I say identity protection services, you'll probably think of a service like LifeLock, which claims to protect your identity from fraudsters and hackers. While that is one of the services out there, there are also groups like Incogni and DeleteMe, which offer to file requests for data removal with the various data brokers that are out there buying and selling your information. I mentioned these companies earlier, but they offer a wide variety of services that are very beneficial for someone worried about their private information online, and I strongly encourage you to at least do some research on them to see if they'd be good for you. This won't apply to everyone watching, but if you own your own website, then you also own a domain name. When you register for a domain name, you're ultimately submitting your information to the ICANN registry. This includes your legal name, address, and phone number. That's a lot of information we really don't want an attacker to get their hands on, so WHOIS Privatization is a critical tool. This is a free option with pretty much any domain registrar, and as you can see here on Cloudflare, I have it enabled for the Goon Raccoon's website. You can verify that you've privatized your information by checking the ICANN registry lookup. And if you see the information marked as redacted or replaced with your registrar's information, then you're good to go. This won't prevent law enforcement from subpoenaing the information, but it absolutely will prevent a private investigator from getting past that particular wall. It's very important to note that country-level domains cannot use this privatization service, but you can pay a third party to substitute their own information for yours. We've talked about a lot today, but I want to stress that this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is the very first episode of Guerrilla Communications, and I'll have a good handful of other videos coming out in the very near future now that this intro episode is done. I don't expect much other content in this series to come out to be this long, but I felt like it was pretty important to go ahead and get this one in as the first episode. If you made it this far, please drop a sub.